Council John Sangwa has called for Zambians to reclaim their constitutional rights and duties, emphasizing the need for citizens to drive the country's transformation. Mr. Sangwa joins me on the hot seat this morning. I'm your host. My name is Peter Zulu. Allow me to welcome my guest this morning. Council, good morning, and State Council, good morning, and welcome to the hot seat.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
The hot seat.
All right, I would like us to start our conversation first by letting our people know that we are live on Kwitu FM 93.3 FM. We're live on Canela FM on 97.7 FM. That's in Lundazi in Eastern Province. We're live countrywide on DSTV channel 912 and GoTV channel 301. You can watch us live on our Facebook and YouTube channel Hot FM Zambia. If you have a question or contribution, feel free to post them in our comments. We'll pick out a few that we'll put forward to State Council here to respond to. I would like us to start with the happenings of yesterday.
Yes.
How does the movement for national renewal, what's your reaction to, what transpired yesterday? We did hear of a life lost at UNZA. A student fell into one of the teachers and drowned. And government has since released 23 million to improve the sanitation situation at the University of Zambia. What's your reaction to these happenings?
Well, any loss of life is always tragic, and it is something that should always be prevented. And that is why we elect government. And the role of government is to protect its citizens. And when there is failure to measure up to that obligation, and that is the consequences we're now seeing. Now, the issue of UNZA has to be seen in a context. I'm a graduate from UNZA, and after I graduated, I went to teach at UNZA. I was there for 20 years. Now, one of the things that we have to look at as a country is to be truthful to ourselves. Sometimes we lie to ourselves. We manufacture progress when there is no progress. Now, a country cannot develop when we don't embrace the truth. The starting point is that UNZA has been in decline. In fact, it's been in decline since the 1990s. UNZA has never recovered. But one of the problems we have had is that whereas there has been an increase in the number of students, there has been no corresponding increase in the infrastructure. Okay? So invariably, the infrastructure will be overwhelmed by human beings. And what you see at UNZA is the consequence of that, lack of planning and everything else. And from the time I left UNZA, this was 2010, I think I've just been there maybe once or twice back to UNZA, because the last time I was there, it was so painful to watch the situation there. UNZA looks like a war zone. In my time, UNZA was the place where people used to go for picnics and everything. It was a beautiful place. Now, everything is in a state of collapse. But again, we have to be realistic because we cannot isolate this thing. Whatever is happening at UNZA is a reflection of what is happening in the country. Because when a country collapses, it's not just one sector that collapses. Every other institution collapses. And that is why we talk about renewal, that there is need for the country to be renewed. Renewed means all institutions of government needs to be renewed. That 23 million you're talking about is a drop in the ocean. It will not fix UNZA's problem. UNZA's problem are both structural and financial. In fact, one of the first things you should address at UNZA is UNZA being run by the people, by the right people in the first place? That is the starting point. Do you have the right people? First of all, the problems are financial. Okay, from the time I was there, I can tell you, I know exactly how UNZA collapsed. Okay, why? Because generally the country also collapsed. UNZA is a public university, which means it has to be fully funded by government. When I was in law school, that was a time when we didn't even have chalk and paper. Can you imagine that? We didn't even have chalk or paper. It was so bad. And when I was in law school, one way of raising money, that is how the law school came up with the idea of introducing the evening program. We raised money as a school to sustain ourselves. Now, you have a bit of contradiction at UNZA. It is a publicly funded, it's supposed to be a publicly funded university, which means it has to be adequately funded. On the other hand, you're asking people to pay some tuition. So you only have two options. If government cannot allow UNZA to be fully funded by the government, then UNZA ought to be allowed to be able to charge economic fees in terms of tuition and raise its own money. Now, it is not adequately funded, and it is also not being allowed to be able to charge reasonable or commercial tuition fees. Now, that's a contradiction.
Why has that situation been allowed to continue?
Well, because of inconsistent policies of governments. Okay, it didn't just start with this government. This problem goes back to the 1990s. Okay, so it is a situation where these are things that will happen. I don't know what the population of student population of UNZA is. By some accounts, I stand to be corrected. Somebody was talking about 20,000 or whatever. Well, in tens of thousands. I don't know the accurate figure, but there is no infrastructure to support such a population. There is none. Which is a very crazy and irresponsible situation to create. When I was at UNZA, per room, there were 2 students. Now I'm told that you have as many as 10 students per room. I mean, how do you allow that? You know, every block has the corresponding number of toilets to accommodate a given number of students. Now, you increase to 10, but the number of toilets haven't increased. And so the infrastructure hasn't changed. So what you have is chaos. That is the problem you have.
So what's the solution here? Do we scale down the number?
Well, you have to be realistic, yes. One of the things that you have to do is to be able to look at it. You can only do what you can, okay? Because in any planning environment, it's like a home. You have a 3-bedroom house. How many people can you keep? Okay. So you cannot keep 30 people in a 3-bedroom house. And at some point, the entire system in the house will collapse. Toilets will collapse, everything else will collapse. So you have a choice to be responsible, is to be able to say, what is the number of students that the infrastructure at UNZA can accommodate? And stick to that number. Last time, one of the reasons I left UNZA, for example, was that in my class, I think we're about 40, law school. And at some point I heard, I never saw this, I heard that they had recruited hundreds. I think at some point they were talking about 700 students in law school. I mean, that is clearly crazy and completely irresponsible to create such a situation. Because it's a matter of common sense. It's a matter of common sense. Do you have the infrastructure that will accommodate that number of students? Okay, if you don't, then you stick to what you can manage. Okay, but the UNZA problem has to be seen within the general context of the state of the economy. That is why sometimes when you hear people say, well, we've delivered on our promises. Which promises have you delivered? Oh, there is a positive economic growth and everything else. I mean, those are figures you are throwing around, but what is the reality on the ground? So the UNZA picture the UNZA situation paints a completely different picture. The starting point going forward is for us to be truthful to ourselves. The real solution to this, unfortunately, it is largely dependent on us growing the economy. That is why some of us, when we're being told when we're increasing the number of parliamentary seats from 156 to 226, we said, don't do it. This is completely irresponsible because the country has other pressing needs, okay, which need attention. Now, you have increased the number of parliamentary seats, and that will be a further strain on the limited public resources. Now you have the UNZA situation. Those funds could have been directed there. Now, these are the challenges that we're going to have. UNZA is just a tip of the iceberg compared to the many other challenges that the country faces.
So what's the lasting solution here, State Council? Because this has been ongoing for many years.
Yes.
And if you look at, the amount of, kids graduating from high school and wanting to go to the University of Zambia, there are many. We look at the free education policy, which now, in turn, will produce more grade graduates that will want to end up at UNZA.
Yes.
Meaning this problem will persist.
It will.
What's the lasting solution for this nation that is hungry for education and hungrier for a higher education?
You know, that is why we're saying, I mean, if you remember when I was here last time, I said one of the things we're asking Zambians as part of the movement for national renewal is we're asking Zambians to pause for a moment. Do they really understand the scale and the complexity of the problems that the country faces? You cannot fix a problem you don't acknowledge. You cannot fix a problem you don't even know exists. Now, it requires collective responsibility on the part of those in government and the citizens to be truthful to ourselves, not the lies that we are being fed, that everything is okay, we are doing well. We are not doing well. We are in a mess. The country is broken, okay? Now, we're not going to attribute it to one individual government, but this is a problem that has been brewing for a long time. In fact, one of the reasons we transitioned from one party state to a multi-party system in 1990s was in recognition of the failure and the general collapse of the economy in the 1990s. We had a good economy at independence over the years, but in 1990, the economy had collapsed. We transitioned to one-party state, thinking that this was going to resolve our challenges. We have never recovered. We have wasted the last 36 years. We have not made progress in 36 years. From 1990, from the time we ended one-party state to where we are, we have not made progress. We have been in decline. Hence the issues you are raising, where you are saying there's so many people leaving schools, okay, but where they're going to get jobs. First of all, there is no corresponding increase in the number of colleges, or now we don't even have colleges. Everywhere you turn is university, which is crazy. You can't have a country full of universities, okay? But even those universities, they're all bogus. I don't know whether anybody has bothered to check how our universities are ranked internationally. They are poorly ranked internationally. There is no single university in Zambia which ranks up amongst the 1,000. Every university in this country is ranked above 1,000 globally. So even the education, even the people you are training, they are not likely to be employed outside Zambia. Our ranking is very, very poor. Now, again, it's not, I mean, this is how you have to understand systems work. Government is a system. When one collapses, it brings down everything. So that is why you cannot fix one thing. We have to overhaul the entire system. These are the problems that we're talking about. People are bragging to say, oh, well, we have done this, we have achieved this, we have achieved that. No, there's no achievement. Those are figures. The real impact on the lives of the people is actually negative. We're talking about free education. Granted, good idea, but how sustainable is it? Okay? Now, I have said this thing. How many of the ministers' children have you seen in this receiving free education? How many? Which minister can stand up and say, my kids are in a private school, are in a public school? How many? There is none. There is none. Why? Because whatever is coming out of these free public institutions is the quality, the standard is very poor. Now, what we're doing is that the challenges we face will be felt in generations to come. But what is required is for us to accept, first of all, that we are in a mess. Then have a national conversation to say, how do we get out of this mess? Rather than pretending that we are doing well when we are not actually doing well at all. The outcome is everywhere to be felt, you know. So we have a problem. So UNZA is part of a larger national problem. It's not an isolated case. You cannot fix UNZA in isolation. You have to fix UNZA in relation to the entire, taking into account all the challenges that face the country.
State Council.
Yes.
I want us to move away from the UNZA situation.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you're very passionate about it as a former UNZA student yourself. I want us to look at the overall governance of our country. How does the movement for national renewal perceive the current political climate in Zambia? That is, in particular, regarding governance and accountability.
You know, it is that question that forced me to leave practice to come and join politics. Okay, I'm privileged. I've been to school. I've studied government. I've never worked in government, but I've studied government. I've studied constitutional law. I've studied how government, how the power in the country is designed, how power is distributed in this country. Okay? I've also studied how it is organized on paper, which means the Constitution. And I've also studied how it is exercised in reality. Now, I saw that there was a mismatch between what the law says and what is happening in reality. And that in itself should not be the case. It shouldn't be the case. Whatever the law says is what should happen on the ground. Now, when there's a mismatch between the two, you are in a state of chaos.
Where's the mismatch coming from, State Council?
Very simple. Let me give you this particular example. I'm struggling to register the Movement for National Renewal. I shouldn't. I should not struggle. It takes you 48 hours to incorporate a company. Right? You go to Pakra, you enter. In fact, you can do it online. You incorporate a company within 2 days. Now, why should I struggle to register a society, to register a political party, which is my constitutional right? Now, they have insisted that, okay, first of all, let me clarify this. People don't understand this thing. The role of the registrar of society is to register a political party, meaning a political party has to be created first. Now, the creation of a political party is a constitutional right. I don't need anybody's permission to form a political party or to belong to a political party. That is my constitutional right. So you and I can come together to say, you know what? We should form a political party to advocate for this idea. That is our constitutional right. I don't need permission from anyone. But what the law now requires that when you have created that political party, you need to register it. The registration process, when you look at the law, is very, very simple. Very simple. All I need is to complete a form, attach the Constitution, and submit it to the registrar. That is all that is required. But what has happened over the years, people have been introducing their own requirements. their own requirements. That first of all, you need to submit fingerprints. You check the act, there is no requirement for fingerprints. You now need to submit a CV. Why do you need a CV for people to form a political party? How? I mean, it's just crazy and completely irresponsible to include those conditions. Thirdly, we are now told, thank you very much, you have completed the form, you have given us your constitution. You still need to be vetted. I mean, how? Okay? It's crazy. Now, thirdly, and this is the craziest of things, we have now been told you have to write to the Inspector General of Police to be cleared. I need to be cleared by the IG to exercise my constitutional right. Can you just imagine how crazy that situation is? Are all these things in the law? They are not. People make rules as they feel like. That is the state of lawlessness we're talking about.
How many of those boxes have you ticked, State Council?
We have followed the law. I'm a lawyer, right? The first thing I did is to check the act. What does the act require? It requires that the party must exist first. Then you complete your form, you submit your constitution and the IDs of the 10 requirements, 10 members. In fact, it does that number 10, I don't even know where it has come from. Okay? There's no stipulation that you need a minimum of 10. There's no such a requirement. Check the law. It's a very simple piece of legislation. Okay? But for political convenience, for whatever reason, people have been infusing, this is what we say, lawlessness. We have ticked, if you look at that particular act, we have met all the requirements. We have met them. Because there is no way I would have submitted the application if we had not met the requirements. Okay? You know, people even refuse to write to you. We submit papers. They say, no, we have evidence. Can you put it in writing, please? You know what? They refuse. Now, why should a public officer refuse to formally write to you to say, I've received this, but you are missing this, this, this? They refuse. Now, that's the lawlessness we're talking about. Those are issues of governance. At the end of the day, what happens? The buck stops. I don't like talking about these things. Okay, I don't like talking about HH and UPND government and the other political parties. But here, I have to say, this is the president's fault. The buck in this case stops with the president. The president is responsible for what is happening. Okay, you may want me to explain.
Why do you say so? Yeah, why do you say so?
Very simple. The Registrar of Society is under the control of Ministry of Home Affairs. And ultimately, the Minister of Home Affairs is part of the executive, which is aided by the president. Whatever is happening with the Registrar of Society reflects the policy of this particular government and ultimately of the president. This is because this is what the president wants. Remember, the minister is the delegate of the president. The registrar is the delegate of the president. He's exercising all these powers on behalf of the president. So when your delegate misbehaves, you as the principal, you are responsible for that. Your delegate can only do what you have allowed them to do. Now, if I challenge the president, if he's not responsible for this, let him give the instructions to the registrar. Or let us tell the Zambian people where all these conditions are stipulated in the law. I can go as far as challenging the Minister of Home Affairs to tell the Zambian people where in the law it says that I need clearance from the Minister, from the Inspector General of Police to form a political party.
Has that clearance been granted, by the way?
Pardon?
Has the clearance been granted by the IG?
No, we submitted papers the other week. This Monday we went there and said, no, the issue is still being considered by the IG. You come on Monday. Monday is a holiday, so we'll go there Tuesday. This is the lawlessness we're talking about. You cannot develop the country in a state of lawlessness. It is impossible. I would like Zambians to hear this. No, there is no government, there is no country that has prospered in a state of lawlessness. The law exists for a reason. The law exists so that you and I can order our lives accordingly. The law exists to make life predictable. It cannot be dependent on what some administrative officer feels like. If he has woken up on the wrong side of the bed, he's going to chuck you out of, he's going to put an additional condition for you to form a political party. That is lawlessness.
You're also talking about vetting, that the constitution needs vetting, or the party itself, the registration needs vetting.
Yeah.
Who does this vetting?
That's exactly the point. There is no provision. I don't even know who vets. Who vets? Who is there to vet? Now, you're taking my fingerprints. Now, if I have a criminal, I have a conviction, are you saying, therefore, I can't belong to a political party because I have a criminal conviction? Which law says that? Which law? Okay? This is the problem we have as a country, and this is one of the reasons why I left my practice to join the political process, so that I can advocate for some of these things, to share the experience and the experience that I have, the knowledge that I have. This is lawlessness. We will not go anywhere as a country when we continue in this way. I'll give you another example. In recognition of this challenge, now, basically, you know what is happening? The current government is effectively in control of all the other political parties in the country. Now, in this situation, how can you have a free and fair election? How? It's impossible. It's impossible. That is why you see the chaos in all these other political parties. You see the chaos. Now, after the amendment of the Constitution in 2016, there was a recognition that there is a problem. That is why we transformed political parties from being clubs, because they were considered as clubs. We made them constitutional institutions. They were now given constitutional status. And that is why I would like to ask all the Zambians to take time to read the Constitution, because it's a requirement that every citizen must have a reasonable knowledge of the Constitution. And there is a reason for that provision, because you cannot have sound governance if citizens are not involved. For them to be involved, they need to have an understanding of the Constitution. We're not saying everybody should become a constitutional lawyer. No, but just understand your Constitution. Now, when you look at it, Article 60 is very clear. It has now elevated political party into constitutional institutions. What should have happened thereafter? What the Constitution also says is that you must pass a piece of legislation which should regulate political parties. Now, in addition to that, that particular piece of legislation should also be able to provide for the control of funding of political parties. It's there in the Constitution. What has happened? That law has never been passed. Okay? Why? Because when you pass that law, then political parties are now subject to control by an independent body, no longer falling under a ministry. Okay? There's going to be an office called the Registrar of Political Parties, independent and outside the control of the executive. PF didn't pass that law, and this government has not passed law. By the way, we took the case to court to compel the government to pass such legislation, and I'm told the judgment is being delivered today before the Constitutional Court. And I look forward to that, and I hope that the Constitutional Court will perform its job and be able to enforce the provision of the Constitution. Now, if we had passed that law, my brother, I can assure you, we would not have had the chaos that we have in other political parties like PF. That would never have existed. And you would not have had problems of alliances being created today and broken, alliances created in the morning and broken in the afternoon. We would not have that. Now, what has happened now, it weakens everything. It messes up everything. Now, these are the challenges. That is the importance of the law. The law makes things predictable. Now, what we are saying here to do with the registrar, the IG, and everything else, if that's what you want, amend the Societies Act so that we all know. But I can tell you, none of these things are contained in the act. So somebody just wakes up in the morning to say, well, don't register political parties. That's it. You're done.
So what happens if you don't get registered? What's your next course of action? Because we've seen a lot of cases or a lot of issues surrounding the Registrar of Societies. We can cite many political parties.
That's right.
Since 2021. We've had leaked audios of suspected government officials that are still being authenticated by government that we haven't heard from till date. A lot of things that are going on in political parties, pulling in different direction. It all goes down to center around the Registrar of Societies. But State Council, what happens to you and the movement if you don't get registered?
Well, I think registration is the least of our worries. You know what our major worry is? Funding of the political party. Okay? And this is something that Zambians need to understand. May I take this opportunity to have this discussion? At the end of the day, there are several options you have, even if you don't get registered. But those options are dependent on you having adequate funding. Now, one of the things we're talking about right now, which we've been asking Zambians, one of the principles that the MNR believes in is that we must fund our own democracy. Okay? Let me explain a bit of background. And this is part of the reason why the country is in a mess. People get elected. They win an election. We don't ask, where did you get the money to fund your campaign? We don't ask that. Okay? And that is why, depending upon how you enter into office, depending upon where you got your money, the source of your money will dictate the policies you implement. And this is what has been the problem since 1991. Now, before 1991, funding was not an issue. You know why? We're in a one-party state. So the funding of the entire election process, including the campaign and everything else, was all funded by the party and ultimately by the government, because the government was owned by the party. It was a single party. So the taxpayers funded everything. Now, after 1991, we said we are going multi-party, meaning that you have as many political parties as you want. Now, we never addressed the issue of funding. So people have just been getting money from all sources. Some money is stolen from government through bogus contracts and so forth. Some money is actually obtained by people who have business interests who look at their funding of a political party as an investment. And we are saying, no, we need to renew our country. And that is why in 2016, when we amended the Constitution, there is now the requirement to say there should have been a law to regulate funding. Now, funding is critical, my brother. If you have $100 million, I have $1 million, is there a fair game? It's not. You're going to outspend me. And you'll be able to reach places, more places than I would. And in that case, there is no level playing field. The law should have been able to regulate the amount, to provide a cap on what a political party should be able to spend in a campaign. Why? To level the field. Now, we are saying as MNR that we will not be able to get money from unknown sources. First of all, everything that is happening under this during this funding election campaign, you will see the country will be awash with money. And all that money, these are all proceeds of money laundering. Okay? Because none of this money actually enters our banking system. Everything is dealt with cash. And what we are saying is that this is not the way to do things. We have to follow the law. So whatever money you have, it should go in the banking system.
How are you doing it differently?
We are saying, this is an interesting point. Somebody says, I'm broke, so I'm asking Zambians to fund me. No, I'm not broke. You have to understand one thing. When I decided to join politics, I said, I cannot do this alone. We have to do it together. Now, a political party is not a one-man's enterprise. And that is why, for example, we didn't form a political party until after we had 1 million people. Okay? Why? Because I don't want to own a political party. I want to belong to a party. I want to be a member of a party. I am a member, but I don't own MNR. I drop dead today, MNR will continue. Okay? I don't own it. Now, we have said, how do we break away? Because, you see, in life, you have to do what you preach. Okay? If I want Zambia to be in a certain, to operate in a certain way, I should lead by example. Mm-hmm. And we are saying there's a problem with funding. And we have said Zambians must be able to fund the movement. Okay? The reason is that when you fund it, you own it. You have a say. You have a stake in the movement. When you don't fund it, when you don't fund a political party, that political party will be accountable to those that have given the money. We have not received a single ngwe from anyone. The only money we are receiving right now is from Zambians. And what we have said, give us whatever you have. It could be 50. Last week, I was with some people at the market, ladies who sell vegetables at the market. And that's where I got the idea from. And I threw that idea to say, guys, tell me one thing. Assuming we formed a political party and I asked for your contribution, say 100 kwacha, will you be able to donate? They said, yes, we would. This was about 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago. We would donate. Okay, then I said, okay, fine, I'll come back. They started harassing me to say, we're ready to give, we're ready to give. I said, no, wait. It is only when we formed the political party, that is now we have opened the door to say, give us the money. Mm-hmm. My brother, if a lady struggling at a market can give us, say, 100 kwacha, 500 kwacha, why would you fail to give us your portion? Why? Okay? Now, this is the whole process of renewal. We need to get Zambians to begin to believe in themselves. Zambia has been messed up by Zambians. Therefore, it can only be fixed by Zambians. And that starts with addressing how we fund our political parties. Now, right now, somebody said, I'll tell you one thing, which I said to a friend. Even if I had $1 billion in my account, I wouldn't put not even $1 billion in the campaign. I wouldn't. Okay? Because if I do that, I'll be buying the election. And when I fund it, I'm uncontrollable. Nobody can tell me anything. And that is why right now we've placed a maximum of 20,000 in a month. I have put in my 20,000, which is the maximum for the month of March. And I'm putting in my other 20,000 in the month of April. Why? We all want to be equal in the political party. Nobody should be seen like he owns the political party. I have the same standing as a person that has put in 50 kwacha, 100 kwacha, 200 kwacha.
Is that realistic, State Council? Because here you can say that.
Yes.
You're putting in these 20,000 kwachas, and at the end of the day, if somebody that just contributes, let's say 3 kwacha or 5 kwacha, comes to question you, will you pay attention to what they're saying?
Of course. That is the premise on which it is founded. The size, here is the point. You see, contribution is not just monetary. Okay, there are those who cannot afford money, say if they have no money, but you can also go and start mobilizing people. Talk to your neighbors. How much does it cost you to talk to your neighbors? Doesn't cost you a thing. Now, that person will have a say that I contributed to this movement. I mobilized the people in my community, and I contributed to the growth of my ward. That person is just as important as I am. And that is why we have said no person should spend more than 20,000 because they begin to feel important. They begin to feel like they own the party. Now, We have refused to say, you see, my brother, you
How do you make it level? And I want to give you an example of the marketeers that you spoke of.
Yes.
Because they're very humble people.
Yes.
And the moment they just hear you say you've even spent 2,000 kwacha, to them that's capital. That's what they're using to, to feed their families, to take care of their families. Already there's some sort of intimidation that has already taken place here, because State Council is contributing 2,000 kwacha. I'm only contributing 100 kwacha. So there's already that inferiority complex, away even from the movement, just in the political spheres.
Yeah.
Because money has been used as the official language, per se, of the power, the powers of the corridors of politics in Zambia.
That's right.
So how do you break that narrative
That's right.
in the movement to make sure that me or the lady on the street that sends that one kwacha will sit down and say, State Council, sit down. I think the direction in which the movement is going is not what I thought it would, and you would listen.
I would listen, because here is the concept. The concept, first of all, nobody has ever implemented this. This is completely novel. And this is born out of the experience of the last 30 years, or the last 35 years. We can't continue doing the same crazy stuff and hoping that the outcome will be different. Now, what are we saying? The policy is, such as you have, you contribute. Okay? That's the concept. So it's not the quantum that is important. It's the very idea that I've put in something. And we don't, when you do that, it is, it is that empowering feeling that I put in something. Because what has happened in politics, we don't even talk about where the funding comes from. Now, we're not saying, because you put in 20,000, you are more important than the other. No. It is such as you have, you put in. Now, that is very important in order to grow the movement. Now, you're saying, and that's what I'm saying, for us, that is the most critical factor. Because without the funding, you can't go forward. You can't. And another point I must add, I've heard in the compounds that some politicians have gone. They're dishing out 100 kwacha, 100 kwacha, 100 kwacha, and mobilizing people, buying them food. Now, anybody sane should not do that. Anybody that is patriotic should not do that. First of all, it is immoral. It is immoral. You can't do that. People are already demeaned. When you go there, you offer them. You are basically buying their vote. It is offensive. What you are doing is that you are exploiting their poverty. It is wrong, and it is illegal. It is vote buying. It is offensive. Now, you give them millimil today. They vote for you. What happens in the next 5 years? What happens? That is where we've gotten it wrong. You cannot, a vote is sacred. You cannot buy a vote. Now, yes, others have gone to the extreme of even buying millimil. Now, I'll tell you, my brother, there are things I've never done in my family, with my siblings and so forth. I've never bought any of my relatives millimil. I never do. I never do. You know why? When a relative of mine comes and says, I don't have millimil, absence or lack of millimil is not the problem. We need to interrogate. Why is it that you don't have millimil? You don't have millimil because you don't have an income. So the solution to your problem is not for me to buy you a bag of millimil. It's for me to work with you to give you an income. When you have an income, you'll be able to buy your own millimil for whatever going forward. So I say, tell me, how can I work with you so that you have a regular income? No, I'll do some business, hypothetically. I said, okay, fine. What is the capital required for that particular business enterprise? It can say 20,000. Okay, how much have you raised yourself? Oh, 5,000. So can you raise another 5,000? Then I'll put in 10,000. He has 20,000 to run a business. It is a more dignified way than me buying him a bag of millimil. He's going to run that business maybe for a year or two, or for a year or so. But in that 1 year, he has taken care of his millimil. It is offensive to buy millimil during campaigns. What we should be talking about is how do we empower our people? They have millimil, not only during campaign period, but throughout their lives.
So you promising,
that is the kind of conversation we should be having.
State Council, are you promising the Zambian people that if you get elected into office and MNR is in government, we will never see MNR distributing millimil during campaigns, whether it is by-elections, general elections, or even the forthcoming election? We will never see MNR members distributing millimil.
Never. I will never do that. Even if they say this is what you need to do in order to win an election, I will never do that. Never. First of all, here's the logic. You have contributed $1,000, 1,000 kwacha, which makes up the money that the MNR has. Does it make sense for me now to use your 1,000 kwacha to go and buy somebody millimil? Does it make sense? It doesn't. Or buy beers, or use that person to give him 100 kwacha so that he can vote for MNR. No. But in any case, we shouldn't go, we will never do that. Why? Because this is what has happened in the last 35 years. And where has that system gotten us? Huh? Nowhere. So that is why we need to change. We can't, it's crazy. We do the same thing year in, year out, election in, election after election, we do the same thing. We end up in the same place. Now, you ask me, and we will rely fully, we'll be fully funded by Zambians. That is our biggest worry. Not so much the registration, is to get Zambians to be able to fund the MNR. That is the main focus, okay? Like I said, even if I had $1 million, I wouldn't put in the $1 million because I'll be uncontrollable, because I'll feel that I'm more important than any other person. And at the end of the day, if I win, if I can give you an example. I was having a chat with one lady in Munali constituency, and we're having this same conversation. And she says, you're right, actually. Do you know what happened with the late Ronald Penza, who was a member of parliament for Munali? So they called Penza and said, Penza, we have problems in this constituency, blah, 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 and so forth. And says, you know what Penza told us? So Penza told us, you are wasting my time. I have no time to listen to you. After all, I funded my own campaign. Okay? And they had no answer. And it is true. Penza funded his own campaign. So he says, when you fund your own campaign, you are not accountable to the people. If somebody else funded you, you're accountable to your funder. If you get a big chunk from some business interests, you are accountable to those business interests. And we are saying we need to change the way we do our politics. Our politics must be funded by Zambians. By the way, we have a tracker, a website, where you can see your money go into the bank. Every way that is being contributed is going into the bank. If you want, you can go on the website and see how much money we have raised. Right now, from whatever we have raised, we haven't spent a single way. When we start spending, first of all, if you check further, you will see the size of donations that have come in. They are all listed from the time we started collecting up to the current. You have a list of all those people. We have left out the names, by the way. We just have the figures.
Okay.
When we start funding, we start spending the money, there will also be another column telling you where your money is going. We will account for everything. Let's do something different. Let's do something transparent and different.
State Council, I want us to get the people involved and pick up a few calls before we close the program. We have very little time left. But I wanted to get this from you.
Yes.
You're in the middle of registration. We've seen other political parties in the middle of court cases, battling it out for who owns the party and what's happening. Other political parties also not clear whether they will be on the ballot or not. What's your stance as far as alliances are concerned? Do we see the MNR joining an alliance if they're not registered? What's your stance on opposition unity?
Well, first of all, like I said, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's no legal framework for it. But in any case, why are we talking about alliances anyway? Because we know that all the alliances that have been created in the past have never succeeded. Why are we still talking about alliances? Okay? It's not a solution. Tell me one viable alliance. Tell me one. There's none. Okay? But
Doesn't
having
the
said
UPND
that,
alliance count?
what?
UPND alliance. They went into an alliance
Oh,
in
really?
2021.
And how did that work out?
And they won an election as UPND alliance.
Now, here's the point I have to make. We've been approached by several people. The last meeting I had was one of my sisters came and said, "Are you guys averse to working with other people?" We said, "No, we are not averse, but we have certain conditions." Okay? The only condition we have is if we can find a political party or a group of people that will say, we are patriotic and we will put the country first, we'll work with such a team. Okay? That's the only stipulation. Any political party that will say it's no longer about an individual, it's not about John Sangwa, it's not about Mr. Banda, it's not about Mr. Thief. If we can collectively agree to say, guys, let's put the country first, let's work together and do what is in there. Now, here's another point. Here's another point where I have challenges with alliances. Most of the conversation revolves around to say, we must come together so that we prevent HH from winning. UPND should not win. That is not the purpose of an alliance. The narrative should be, let's come together and give Zambians an alternative. Okay? An alternative in terms of what we will do better than what UPND and HH have done. That should be part of the conversation. But unfortunately, the conversation has not gone that far. It is all about, stop, HH should not win. HH should not win. UPND should not win. That can't be the objective of the alliance. It's a democracy. So at the end of the day, you can have as many political parties as you want. We need to accept this. I know people are this thing has been going on for a while. People say, oh, come together, come together. I say, guys, that language is undemocratic. It is undemocratic because it's a multi-party system of government. Anybody has the right to form a political party if he believes he has enough muscle to win an election. Who are you to stop such a person? Okay? But at the end of the day, the political parties themselves, they'll weigh themselves. I'll tell you one thing. The alliance is the least of my worries. If for some reason the political actors don't get their acts together, the people are smart enough to resolve that through the ballot. Because it happened in 2021. How many political parties were there? 15 or 16. 15 or 16. Now, this conversation is basically, we are embroiled in conversations that do not really add value to our democratic discourse. Yes, you can do that, but the people are smart. I don't have faith in government institutions, but I have faith in the Zambian people. When the nomination period closes and the election day comes, Zambians are smart enough. In the last election, there were 15 or 16 political parties. What happened? In the end, the election was between two political parties. People are smart. They can read through these things. They can know that a vote to this political party is a spoiled vote. Okay? But also, people forget the nature of our system. Presidential election, for you to win, you have to get 50 plus 1. It's not first past the post. You would be worried if it was a first past the post for a presidential ticket. You'd be worried. Because what it means, it's like Mwanawasa, the way he won in 2001. Mwanawasa won with with about 27 or 29% of the votes. Okay? Meaning that 70% of the population rejected him. Now, we have changed that narrative. A presidential candidate has to get 50 plus 1. And the people know. Now, if for some reason nobody gets 50 plus 1, you go for a rerun. So the issue is already covered in the law. So I don't know why we're so concerned about this issue. Now, what you should be, and at the end of even at parliamentary level, that's why you have first past the post. It's a completely different system altogether. Okay? We need to have faith in our system. The problem of Zambia is that we don't respect our systems. We don't respect our constitution. Okay? We question the constitution. You shouldn't. You take the constitution as it is, not as you think it ought to be. That is the problem.
State Council, let's squeeze in a few calls and we close. It's 0974-870-877 or 0950-955-877.
Call now and be part of the show. Dial 0974-870-877. The hot seat on Hot FM.
Give us a call now. It's 0974-870-877 or 0950-955-877. Those lines will get you through to the hot seat this morning. If you have a question or contribution, we would like to hear from you. We would ask you to just keep it brief so that State Council gets to respond to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete.
Morning to you. What's your name?
Great. Good morning, Council.
Morning, sir.
Thank you. Charles Bell is a on the line.
All right, Charles, what's your question?
What steps, Honorable Sangwa, will you take after going through this regarding process of register of society and the police if you will not be allowed to proceed with the registering of your movement? Because of late, I've been saying this, looking at the hand, the big hand. I'm not saying any other person, but the big hand of the president is in forefront of these institutions to determine who must be registered and who must not. So for me, it's only the president whom we should blame about all these issues that are happening. Thank you so much.
All right, Charles, thank you very much. Let's squeeze in another call so that you tackle them at the same time. It's 0974-870-877. Good morning.
Good morning, PZ.
Morning to you. What's your name?
This is Peter. Good morning, Council.
Morning, sir.
Thank you very much. We are listening, and you are speaking very well, sir.
Thank you.
But as a concerned citizen, I want to highlight something very important. I think that with the formation of these political parties in the name of democracy and the defection of some key members from their own political parties to join these other political parties, I think this will bring voter apathy. I think we are going to have the most low turnout of voters because these voters, at the end of the day, they have got their own leaders. Now, we find that if a leader joins another political party or a ruling party, these followers, some of them, they are left with no leader to start now wondering which political party to vote for. Then last one, on the voter agenda, sir. We still have the voter agenda who doesn't qualify to be in that office. I want to get your comments, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, State Council, tackle those.
Yeah, the first question was talking about what strategies do we have in the event that we don't get registered. But again, I can't begin to discuss strategies that we have. I think there are a number of options at our disposal. But one thing that we're doing on the ground is that we are mobilizing. We have our structures being put up to be able to, in readiness for the election. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to make a decision if it becomes clear that the registration will not be given. And like I said, the most important thing for us is the funding. Once the funding is there, all the other options are on the table. The critical factor, the critical constraint will be the funding that will determine whether we take part in the election or not. The second question...
And you also wanted to find out if you change anything with the way the Register of Society is run. Yes.
Yeah, if I would change.
If you would change anything with the way, with what
yes.
you've experienced.
Yes.
If you change the way that the Office of Registrar
there is
of
already
Society
a law.
run.
The first thing, the first order of business is to pass the political parties bill, which has been in pending since 2017. It's simple. I mean, just follow the law. I sometimes struggle why people don't like following the law. I have a problem with that. Now, and that is partly what has contributed to our challenges as a country. So the law is there. The Constitution says this. You respect that. By the way, I had an interesting conversation with some people who came to say, no, there is nothing wrong with it. The problem of Zambia is the Constitution. I said, no, the problem of Zambia is not the Constitution, but our inability to respect it, to follow it. That is the problem. If I may just add to this, You have the problem of the Auditor General. Well, the law is in black and white. 65, you can't be in an office. Now, why would you be in an office, even you as a person? Forget the responsibility of the appointing authority. You yourself, you know, the Constitution is clear. You have reached a certain age. And the Constitution says you can't be in an office beyond this age. Why would you be in the office? Because remember, you as a person, you also have an obligation to respect the Constitution. The appointing authority has an obligation to respect the Constitution, and even you as a citizen has an obligation to respect the Constitution. Okay? So that is where we are failing. Now, the second caller raised an important point about people crossing over. Now, I mean, this is something that shocks me. And this is the challenge. But unfortunately, this has been going on since even before independence, where people cross over from one political party to another, one political party to another. Recently, I'll tell you one experience that I had. Somebody came to me and said, I would like to join the movement. And I said, okay, you're welcome. And but I have to tell you. I said, okay, thank you very much. What is it? You know, I was a member, I'm still a member of this political party. And I said, oh, is that so? I said, yes. But why do you want to leave your party? No, there are too many problems. And I said, no. You know what? Go back. Go back to your political party and solve your problems. Okay? Solve your problems. We shouldn't celebrate defections. We shouldn't. So I told this person, go back and sort out the problems in your political party. Because even here in MNR, we have our own problems. Okay? We have our own problems. There's no political party which has no problems. Now, the sad part is we celebrate defections. It's crazy. You shouldn't celebrate defection. If somebody can defect from the party where he started, joins another political party, joins you, remember, in the same way, that person will also defect to another political party when it is convenient. So we have to stop that, okay? We have to discourage, and for some reason, other political parties even celebrate. Oh, we have so many people that have joined us. It's crazy. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Because what happens if you flip the script? What about, how would you feel if your own members are defecting to go to other political parties? Okay? So if it is not right for you, why should it be right for another person? Okay? So that is something that we need to discourage. But again, it shows you that our politics need to be refined. Because what would be the driving, the incentive to move from one political party to another? And in any case, there's a story. I mean, that is why I won't go there. I wanted to go somewhere very controversial, but I won't. But the point is this. We have to encourage our members from other political parties, to stay where they are. Because there will always be problems. There will always be problems. The other point the gentleman raised was what? He raised two issues.
He raised two issues. The other issue, I think that's the one you touched on, the issue to defections. He's worried that with these defections, we're going to get a lot of voter apathy because a lot of voters will be left out in the open.
No. We have to discourage voter apathy. Okay? Remember, it is your constitutional obligation to take part in an election. Okay? So you shouldn't. A democratic system of government is messy. It is imperfect. So there will always be these challenges, but that is not the reason to stay away from voting. You need to take part. Now, even if the political party standing there, the presidential candidates are the worst candidates you have ever had as a country, you still are obliged to go there and pick up the best amongst the worst that is there. Because you still need a president anyway. That's the nature of democracy. You know, it's not easy. It is messy. It is difficult. And it doesn't always get it right. But the beauty is that when it gets it wrong, it has a way of correcting itself. So apathy, I discourage fellow Zambians, don't stay away from the ballot. Don't stay away. You have your right to turn out in huge numbers and cast your votes.
State Council, I'd like to thank you very much for coming through to the hot seat today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
There you have it. We had the Movement for National Renewal. State Council John Sangwa joined us on the hot seat today. You can join us for another exciting edition of the hot seat with my colleague Chisha Mubambe on Tuesday next week, right here on Hot. Coming up next is the Urban Vibe right here with Buchizia. So keep it locked right here on Hot. The heat is on. It's goodbye for now. Do stay tuned to Hot 87.7. To those of you that were listening to us on 93.3 FM, we're saying thank you very much. And those of you that joined us in Eastern Province on Canela FM on 97.7 FM, all the way in Lundazi, we're saying thank you and goodbye for now.
That's all for today. Tune in again next time for another exciting edition of the Hot Seat on Hot FM.
Make delicious homemade meals effortlessly with new Binto noodles with spice and herb.
Mama B is making Binto tonight.
Good, better, Binto.
This month end, give your money the upgrade it